video that you just watched is based on Mark chapter 8, and it is one of many stories in the Bible of how Jesus healed someone who had leprosy. Now, it is worth noting, and please understand this, that the people in biblical times, the time of Jesus, the Jewish people, believed that the true Messiah would be able to heal those with leprosy. Keep that in mind. From Matthew chapter 8, verse 1. When he, Jesus, was come down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. In the context, if you read through the Gospel of Matthew, it leads up to this event right here. Jesus came down from what we would refer to as a big hill. Not the one that Boone's on, that's a mountain, but a big hill like here in Wilkes County that was overlooking the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus had just delivered his most famous sermon, the one that we refer to as Sermon on the what? Sermon on the Mount, right? A lot of people heard Jesus preach that day, and they were absolutely amazed at his teachings, and you can see that in the Bible verses. They just point out people were just astonished at his teaching, so much so that they wanted to hear more of him. So as he came down off the mountain, they just started following him. Well, somehow or another, Jesus and the disciples were able to slip away from that crowd so they could go to Capernaum, because remember, this is at the very beginning of his ministry. Verse 2, and behold, there came a leper, just like in the video, and worshiped him, saying, Lord, if thou wilt, thou canst, you can make me clean. So on the outskirts of Capernaum, Jesus and his disciples encountered a man with leprosy. Now, leprosy, I'm sure you've heard teachings on it many times before, was a really bad skin disease. They portrayed that pretty well in the video that you just watched. Skin lesions, open wounds all over your body, a lot of pain, a lot of infection. There was no known cure for leprosy back in biblical times. Occasionally, leprosy would heal up on its own and go away. But most of the time, people suffered with leprosy till the day they died. And sometimes they died from infections from those leprosy wounds that then went into their blood, into sepsis. Leprosy was very contagious. So people with leprosy were told to stay away from other people. They were kicked out of their homes, out of their families. They were kicked out of town. They lived on the outskirts of town, hoping that someone would come along, maybe in the family, come along and just leave them some food to eat. This man with leprosy, think about it. He'd lost his family, his friends, his job, his membership at the Y, and everything else. He lost it all. Now think about it for a moment. Put yourself in his shoes. How do you think he felt at that time? Kicked out. How do you think he'd felt? Give me something. Anybody? I'm hearing a lot of it. You're exactly right. This man was very discouraged. Man was depressed. He had to have been. Felt lonely, felt alone, fearful, hopeless, possibly even suicidal. A lot of these guys and women and children may have felt that way. But something happened one day that changed that man's life. Jesus passed by his way. What did the man do in the story or in the video? He approached Jesus directly, which was against the law. I mean, that was against the law. He wasn't supposed to do that. But he felt like that was the only chance he had of improving his life. Did he believe Jesus to be the Messiah, the Son of God? Maybe, because after all, he knelt down before Jesus and worshiped him. Now, obviously, this man had heard from others, possibly even somebody who had been at that wedding in Cana, or in Hebrew, Cana, how Jesus had performed all kinds of miracles. You know, he believed at least that much, or else he wouldn't have even approached Jesus. He would have just stayed out there and hoped somebody brought him something to eat. He had that much faith. And he expressed his faith in Jesus by pointing out that he believed that Jesus could heal him of his leprosy if Jesus was willing to do so. Verse 3, And Jesus put forth his hand and touched him, saying, I will heal you. Be thou clean, cleansed, healed. And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. Now the law made it very clear. No one was allowed to touch a person with leprosy or anything that person with leprosy had touched because it was so contagious. So what you have here is another one of those examples of where Jesus chose to have compassion on someone in need over the keeping of a law that had been interpreted way too strictly. You see, the law was never intended to prevent someone from helping someone in need. But the Pharisees put all those extra regulations on the law itself. Very strict interpretation of the law. Jesus came to fulfill the law. Verse 3 tells us that Jesus touched the man with leprosy and healed him how quickly? Immediately, or you could use the word instantly, in the blink of an eye. Whenever Jesus healed someone in the Bible, it was always fully and completely, not part way, ever. Verse 4, and Jesus saith unto him, the man, see thou tell no man. Don't go around telling what happened, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a testimony unto them. So, whenever people felt like that they were healed from their leprosy, they were required to meet with the local priest who would declare whether or not they were free from leprosy. If a person was declared to be free from leprosy, that person then needed to give an offering. That's a reference to the gift that Moses commanded. An offering that usually included a meat offering and a container of oil. Now, I'll be honest with you. Back in biblical times, if you lived back then, and you came down with leprosy, and Jesus healed you of leprosy, yeah, you're going to the priest, and you're going to be willing to give a lamb, a dove, a few ducks, a cow, and a whole bunch of chickens, right? I mean, you're going to be willing to do that. Because the people who had leprosy didn't have any hope at all. They didn't have any. So yeah, when it came time to give an offering, you would have gone way above what was required because you would have been that happy. Now, there's a little old phrase here in this verse where Jesus asked this man to kind of, keep this quiet. Maybe he wanted to make sure that this guy did what was needed to do. In other words, don't go back in town, hang out with your friends for a week and all of this, but go straight to the priest to be declared healed, and then go back and talk to your friends. That's possible. But probably more likely, these people wanted to see Jesus. They wanted to hear Jesus. They'd just been on Sermon on the Mount, right? Like a few minutes before this happened. And those people wanted to crowd around Jesus. They wanted to follow, they wanted to hear him, but they wanted to see more miracles. Were they trying to get right with God? Most of them weren't, be honest with you. Most of them weren't, just like today. But they wanted to see more miracles, so they were just pressing in. And Jesus didn't want that kind of crowd. He wanted to teach people, but he just started his ministry. He needed to teach those disciples. He needed to start the ministry, roll it out kind of slowly to begin with. Now, as his ministry picked up, especially after he left Capernaum, for the next 2.5 years, he turned everybody loose, said, tell anybody you want to tell, what Jesus has done for you. Tell anybody. Tell everybody. Now, if I were doing what we would call a classic 3-point sermon, here's what I'd do. Number one, this man recognized his need. Man with leprosy in Matthew 8 and the one you saw portrayed in the video recognized that he had a need that he could not possibly meet. The medicines that treat leprosy today did not even exist back then. They didn't even have Neosporin or cortisone 10 or anything like that. They didn't have methylate. Remember that stuff Grandma used to put on and you'd scream like for a long time? They didn't even have that kind of stuff back in the day. So this man found himself in a desperate condition. Guess what? Sometimes we do too. Life can throw us a lot of curveballs sometimes, and we can find ourselves in some situations that we cannot handle and that we cannot fix on our own. It's during those times we need to recognize our need for God. Number two, this man came to Jesus for help. I mean, the man with leprosy realized he could not heal himself. No doctor could heal him. No medicine could heal him. But he'd heard about Jesus. He had heard that Jesus had healed people from all kinds of sicknesses, diseases, palsies, evil spirits, mental health issues, all mentioned in Matthew chapter 4. So based on what he had heard about Jesus from the people he trusted, this man with leprosy believed that Jesus could heal him. And that explains why this leper came to Jesus for help. We need to do the same thing today. We need to come to Jesus for help. Now, I know that a lot of people have a lot of pride today, and they will not in any form or fashion come to Jesus for help. They think that they will be able to solve their own problems by themselves. That's not the way I think. I don't think that way at all. When I've got a problem, facing a challenge, a struggle, a hard time, whatever it is, I go to Jesus, right? I go to Jesus and I pray for his help and for his guidance. Now, Jesus will expect you and me to do our part in working on whatever problem we're dealing with. But let's be honest. We sometimes can face problems in our lives that we cannot possibly fix without the help of God. So come to Christ, folks. Come to Christ and ask him for help, just like this leper did. Number three, Jesus had compassion and met this man's need. What did he do for him? What did Jesus do for this guy? He healed him, but even more than that, gave him his life back. Man was able to go home. He was able to sit down and eat a meal with his family that night, play with the kids, hang out with his friends, cafe, get back in society, all those kinds of things. So it was a huge change for this man. Now listen very carefully. Jesus loves you, and he has compassion on you, and he has the power to change your life too. Jesus has the power to change your whole life situation. He can meet the deepest needs of your heart. He can fix problems for which you presently can see no solution to. That's the kind of power that Jesus has. Man with leprosy experienced that kind of power, and you can too. So if I wanted to focus on a 3-point sermon, that's what I would do. But here's what I want to really focus on. I want to go in a different direction in terms of the application. You already got a 3-point sermon. We're at the application part now. Want to make the application a little bit more personal for you and a little bit more challenging for you. And all I ask is that you let the Holy Spirit speak to you about this. That's all I'm asking. I want you to consider 2 things, 2 questions. Number 1, how do you feel when someone treats you like you have leprosy? How do you feel? Man in Matthew 8 felt lonely, fearful, discouraged, depressed, and so on. Anyone would feel that way in his situation. But how do you personally feel when someone cancels you out of their lives, or unfriends you on Facebook, or gives you the silent treatment, or simply doesn't want to hang out with you anymore because they don't like your views on politics, religion, abortion, or whatever? How do you feel when someone treats you like you have leprosy? You probably feel pretty bad, just like the man in Matthew 8 did. Well, as a Christian, Why would you want to do something that would make someone else feel bad? Question number 2, who are the people in your life whom you treat as though they have leprosy? Who's on your leper list? Okay, you didn't see that question coming this morning, did you? You didn't see that one coming. I didn't see it coming until yesterday afternoon when the good Lord put that out there and said, you need to deal with this. Your leper list might include a family member, former friend, co-worker, classmate, fellow church member, someone in the community. But in your mind, right now, in your mind, name someone whom you have canceled in your life or you have unfriended on Facebook. Name someone whom you go out of your way to avoid at work, at school, or at Walmart. Name someone whom you refuse to talk to because of their views on politics, religion, abortion, or whatever. Name someone whom you keep on the outskirts of your life. Name the people right now in your mind whom you treat as though they have leprosy. I can't read minds, but I know what some of y'all are thinking. You are thinking that you are absolutely justified in your actions toward other people. You are thinking they deserve what they're getting. Really? Really? What if Jesus gave you what you deserve? What if he gave you what you deserve? Look, there is only one right way to look at this issue. We must ask ourselves, is God pleased with the way that we treat other people? Last time I checked, God calls for us to love, to forgive others, to be peacemakers in our relationships with other people. So please, whatever you do, do not treat anyone like they have leprosy, but have some compassion on them instead. Now, this morning for our hymn of commitment, Owen Mack's going to sing a song for us. And here's what I want you to do. You just remain seated right where you are. You want to close your eyes, you can, or you can look around. But here's what I want you to do. I'm going to give you some time right now to think about your life spiritually. I know you're busy. I know you got a schedule, you got to be somewhere or whatever. I don't know what you got going on today. But I'm going to ask you to sit still for just a few minutes and allow this song and the questions that are in this song to cause you to reflect on your spiritual needs this morning, to cause you to reflect on what you need to do in your relationship with Christ this morning, to cause you to reflect on what you need to do in relationship to other people, especially those people you've canceled out. So right where you are, you come to the altar and pray anytime you want to during the service, but right where you are, listen to this song and apply it to your life.